Good morning, good evening, and hello everyone. My name is Payal Tandon. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and today we are here to talk about algebra and how is it that you can learn the right way, practice the right way in order to ace algebra so that you can get to your target score of 730 plus on your GMAT. All right, so we ask a few for poll questions just to set the context of the group over here. So your current quant score, majority of you, let me broadcast the results here so that all of you can see what I am seeing. Let's see here. So current quant score, majority of you are below 40 according to your assessment. And then there are few of you who are already in the Q49, Q50 range, which is good. Again, regardless of what level you're at, you're going to learn so much from this session so that you will be able to incorporate the appropriate strategies that will lead you to your target quant score. Okay, and believe me when I say that, whether you are at Q30 or at Q49, you will learn a lot from this session. And that's the basic fundamental principle behind our quant course. It is personalized to your starting abilities. Now, as far as the target quant score goes, needless to say, majority of you are targeting that Q49 plus score. A number of you are targeting Q51, about a third of the class. And again, Q51 is a good target, absolutely amazing target, but a lot depends upon how you are performing in the final test environment. You have to be very, very precise. Q50 you can target absolutely, and you can work towards that by working on your ability enhancement. Q51 is really, how you perform in that final test. Now, we conduct these webinars every weekend, so I would want all of you to register for the reading comprehension webinar that would be conducted following Saturday. So Saturdays are our verbal and strategy days. Sundays are typically our quant days. So if you like what you see today in the algebra webinar, then definitely you're going to love what you're going to see in the geometry webinar following Sunday, because again, we make sure that you're learning the right way, learning the effective way in order to get to your target score. Now, when do you plan to take the test? That's another poll that we have asked, and thank you all for responding to that. About 42% of the class has not taken the GMAT test date yet. I would urge all of you to take the test date. Why? Because if you have that target date in mind, then it just gets you to that next level of seriousness, because you know that you have a target to accomplish. Now, again, the target needs to be something that you can accomplish, which is it needs to be realistic, which means you need to have a very solid idea of what your starting points are and what your journey needs to entail, which is why I urge all of you to create personalized study plan here at e-GMAT so that you get precise ability estimates, your starting ability estimates, by taking the Sigma X mock, and then you strengthen your strengths, right? And then you make sure that you continue to work on your weaknesses so that you can get to your target score in the right manner, right? So definitely do that. All right, so now even if your test date is within the next 15 days, you are at the right place. Maybe what you're looking for is that 1 or 2 point increase in your quant score. Definitely, you will be able to learn the strategies that would help you get there. Okay, now I'm going to change the presentation screen here. Click yes if you can see Algebra 2.0 from basics to mastery using expert AI on your screen. All right, sounds good. Now, a few housekeeping rules before we get going into the thick of the session. If I am asking you a question, I would want you to respond to that question in the short answer poll or the yes/no poll that you see towards the right-hand side of your screen. Okay, if you have a question for me, you post that question in the Q&A pod over here. Now, these are questions that only I can see. Now, I may be able to take these questions during the flow of the session, or I may decide to take these questions towards the end, again, keeping in mind that the flow of the session is very important, okay? But feel free to post your questions here. All right, I think that's about it. Now, I want this to be a very interactive session. That's how I conduct all my sessions. Again, that's how you get the maximum learnings from it. Now, what we're going to do in this session is that we're going to give you first the feedback on your current conceptual ability. Why is that important? e-GMAT is the course architecture at e-GMAT is built on very straightforward principle. You master your concepts, okay? Then you learn how to apply those concepts on easier questions. Now, in the context of quant, this translates into how do you apply the 7 process skills so that you prepare yourself to answer the more complicated questions, okay? So you first build your conceptual understanding, you learn how to apply those concepts by applying the process skills, which means you have to be cognizant of those process skills so that you prepare yourself to answer those 700 level questions. And that methodology is what we are going to demonstrate in front of you today in this algebra session. Now, the philosophy that you see here, the demonstration that you see here, that is the bread and butter, that is the basic foundation behind, or the basic architecture behind each and every module in the quant course, okay? So this way you'll get an idea whether this way of learning is the right way of learning for you or not, okay? And as I said, you will see how the course is personalized. You're going to see a demo of that in this 1 to 2 hour long session, okay? And now let's get started with the concept related questions. How we're going to do this is I have about 7 questions. I have exactly 7 questions. I'm going to ask you these questions in one shot. I'm not going to give you the answers. Towards the end of this, I'm going to give you feedback on your conceptual understanding, okay? Now, I cannot teach you all the concepts within these 2 hours, right? For that, there is the course, okay? But I'll give you enough so that you are well equipped to answer the questions that follow along in this session. So if you are at a, if algebra is your weak area, if again, let's see what the conceptual clarity provides. So what feedback you get based on the concept related questions, then we'll see the expectations that I want you to have from the rest of the session, because again, having the right expectations is very, very important, okay? So are you all ready for concept related questions? Yes, no? Let's hear something from you guys in the short answer poll. Since the last 8 minutes I've been talking, so let's hear from you as to what is it that you're looking for from this session. How have you prepared till now? So again, just a little bit of chit chat before we get started. Actually, let me get a chat pod here so that I can address you by your names as well. Yeah, so go ahead. So just tell me, how have you prepared for quant so far? What are your expectations from this session? And then we'll get started in another 1 or 2 minutes after I have responded to a couple of your comments here. So I see some of you are typing. That's good. Confidence on 700 level plus questions. Kartika, absolutely. Have not started with prep, Murugan. You're at the right place. Okay, good. So we can definitely accomplish that. Hi, Payal, my namesake. I'm new to GMAT, hoping to get an idea. Absolutely, Janita, you will definitely get an idea. Samuel, I haven't really prepared, but I know I can get prepared with this webinar. Absolutely, you will get a very solid launch pad. Isra, I haven't prepared so far, but I have 3 months to prepare and thinking to get a paid version. All right, Isra, let me know by the end of the session if you're convinced. Started a year ago, Maiva. Okay. Satish, warming up after a gap in preparation. I understand, gaps happen, and it's a very good idea to get back in the rhythm through a session like this. So very good strategy, Satish. Frank, getting some difficulty on hard questions, but I know the basic concepts. All right, Frank, I am going to ask you how you particularly performed in the conceptual section. So good. If I forget to ask you, definitely type in over here, because I'm going to enable this chat again. Okay, so all right, I'm going to just read a few more now. Maiva started a year ago but cannot improve. Maiva, definitely write to us, okay, so that we can help you. Mac, I have a 660 already and I want to improve my score. All right, so good. Again, write to us and so that we can give you that personalized study plan. That's very important. Bhuvan started algebra section today and looking for clear understanding of few concepts. Okay, where did you start algebra section today, Bhuvan? Moksha, I only started preparation. I've joined to improve my concepts. Okay, sounds good. Sounds very good. Okay, Shubh also says that equipped with concepts but having a hard time applying. So most likely people who are saying that they are equipped with concepts but having a hard time applying, then process skills is the way to go. You have to start learning from process skills standpoint, okay, and then move on to the 700 plus level questions. So I'm going to pause here. Isra, 3 months is absolutely a good time to be able to secure 720 plus score. Depends on how diligently you prepare. People have done it. 3 months is more than enough time, regardless of what level you're starting from. Let me tell you this also, okay? If you are actually starting from a 600 level, then 3 months, then you can get there within one to 1.5 months as well, right? So again, it all depends upon where you're at. Bhuvan, if you've started the e-GMAT course, that's good. But if you've just, so it's a good idea to be here, absolutely, because then you'll understand how to utilize the diagnostics. But yeah, so definitely it's a very good idea. Okay. All right. I'm going to hide this now and let's bring back my short answer poll. Now, here's what we're going to do. I am going to show you questions like this one, right? You see WP underscore Q1 here. So I want you all to click on still solving. In these webinars, again, these are skill building webinars, so we don't time you all, okay, because all of you are at, you guys are at different skill levels, so it's not fair for me to time you based on, standard thing. You should be able to solve this question within a minute or minute and a half. So when you guys click on still solving, I know how many people are actively engaged in the question, so I give you a timed warning when about 50% of you have made a selection, right? So right now I have exactly 19 people who are actively engaged in this question. Okay, so I'm going to hold that as my population that is going to be responding to this question. Okay, so let's get started here. Right, 20 folks. I'm going to unbroadcast the results, and here you go. You're going to see 7 questions back to back. Okay. There you go, your first question. Last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to show you next question. Click on still solving, please. Okay, here you go, question number 2. Last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, here comes the poll for question number 3. Still solving, please. You guys are getting better at this. Good. Here's question number 3. Last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, let's go to question number 4. Good. Here's question 4. Last 10 seconds. All right, ending the poll. Okay, question number 5 coming up. All right, question 5. Last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll. Question number 6. Okay, still solving. All right, here's question 6. Last 10 seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. And the last question, question number 7, still solving. Good. And here is the last question. Last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll. All right, let me get the chat back here. How was this? How was this marathon of 7 easy questions, conceptual questions, so they are easier? How was that? Kriti says easy. Were you guys 7th is the best? Yeah. Tati says that. 7th is a very interesting question. Quite inspirational, Frank says. Okay, good, Frank. I will wait for you to tell me how many questions you got correct. Good ones. I feel like I'm in Greece. Okay, didn't understand that, Janita. Easy. Okay, all right. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you the answers for all the questions, okay? And I want you all to maintain count of the questions that you're getting correct. So the easiest way to do that is I will show you. So just put in as as I'm giving you questions, because I'm going to give you correct answers in sets, and I'm going to show you your responses as well. I'm going to broadcast the results so that you can see what you entered, and then just maintain your counter over here. 1 question correct, 2 questions correct, something like that, right? So all right, so and then I'm going to give you collated feedback. So let's come back to question number 1. The correct answer here is choice B. So make a note of if you got this question correct. Okay. Question number 2. That's the one that you see on the bottom over here. What is the range of values of y if x minus y is greater than -3? Right, that question. So this one, the correct answer is choice B again. So only 57% of the class got this one correct. Okay. I'm not seeing any responses here in the short answer poll. I want you to maintain a counter over here. Okay. Or you can maintain it on your scratch pad too. That works well too. So question number 3, the correct answer is choice C. So choice C is the correct answer. About 70% of the class got this one correct. Now, if you got at least 1 question wrong here, that means there is an issue with your linear inequalities conceptual understanding. Okay, for you to be confident that you are absolutely certain about all the concepts that you need to know in terms of, or majority of concepts that you need to know in terms of linear inequalities, then you should have answered all these 3 questions correctly. Okay, regardless of the kind of mistake that you did. Okay, I want you to draw that inference that only if you are 100% over here, that you should say that, okay, you are conceptually good. Ran out of time for B, even if that's the case, okay, still, because you ran out of time, and again, remember, I timed you not based on any irrelevant time or any, random timing estimates. I timed you all based on how the rest of the people in this cohort were performing, right? So if you ran out of time, then also it means that that you are not as clear with the concepts as you should be. Okay. Because it's one thing to know the concepts, it's another thing to be able to apply the concepts within the timing constraints, right? And at e-GMAT, when we teach you the concepts, we make sure that you understand the concepts to such a degree that you see the question and you're able to solve it within the timing constraints. Okay, so that's very important. Another thing which I will tell you is you need to be able to answer questions correctly for the right reasons. Okay, so when I go through the solutions at that time, if you got to the correct answer but you missed out on something very important, then that will be an issue. Then I want you to consider that question as wrong. Okay, my voice is breaking. Voice is fine for me. Okay, then it is the issue at your end. Thank you so much, folks. So let's look at the next one here. Question number 4. So we are done with inequalities, linear inequalities. Now it's the turn of quadratic inequality. So these 2 questions were based on quadratic inequalities. I'm going to remove the polls here. Yeah. Now, question number 4, choice C is the correct answer. Let's go to question number 5. Broadcast. Again, choice C is the correct answer. Okay, question number 5 is quadratic inequality, but in the garb of a rational inequality. Okay, so all right, so again, if you answered even one of these questions incorrectly, then that means there are some conceptual gaps with regards to quadratic inequalities. Okay, now the last one is based on absolute inequalities. Question number 6, choice C is the correct answer. So let's see. Over here, choice C is the correct answer. Then question number 7, choice C again is the correct answer. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you all to enter this in the poll, because I know only a few of you were putting in your total score here. So now is the chance for all of you who were actively participating to put in how many questions you got correct. Because again, we saw the number of, we saw the accuracy. The accuracy was less than I would say 80% in few questions and less than 60% in quite a few questions. So let's see that over here, because this is the true assessment of your conceptual ability. So you can see over here, people who don't have, people who are at who answered all questions correctly, very good in terms of conceptual clarity, right? So I want you to take this feedback that, regardless of where you're at, it's very important to understand where you're at so that you know what is it that you need to fix. Okay, so I want this to be a very, very important feedback for you so that you can fix your conceptual ability. So now let me go back and ask, I think it was Frank and one other person, I don't remember, who said that conceptually you guys are good, but you're not able to solve 700 plus questions. So I remember Frank's name. I'm trying to see in my notes if I where I wrote down the other person's name. So yeah, Shubh. So how about Shubh and Frank? And again, others who felt that their conceptual clarity was good, tell me, does this assessment capture that? Frank, that's good. If you got all of them correct, really good. So we'll focus on process skills next. Okay. Yeah. So tell me, what did you think about this conceptual feedback that you got? I see some of you are typing here, so I'll wait for you guys to type, and then we'll move forward to looking at how is it that you can build your conceptual clarity. And again, the point is that through this session here, I was able to give, I was within the timing constraints, I was able to give you 7 questions, right? And you got a lot of feedback over here, right? All of those. So regardless of whether you answered all the questions 100% correct, or your accuracy was less than 100%, you got that feedback as to what is it that you need to prepare for, right? Now, when you do the diagnostics, each module in the quant course has two-level diagnostics. One is GMAT skills, which is 700 plus level questions. The second is concept diagnostics. So linear inequalities, in this you answered 3 questions, right? In the course, you're going to answer 7 questions, right? Which is why you will be able to get even more fine-grained diagnostics, so that you get that feedback whether you need to go through all these 3 files that you see over here, or only one of those files, or 2 of those files, right? You get that level of feedback, which is why the course is personalized to you, regardless of whether you are already at 49 level or you are at 30 level. So Kate, if you're struggling with basic concepts, that's absolutely fine. You need to just trust the course and just follow along the recommendations that the course gives you. Okay. Now, quadratic inequalities, you answered only 2 questions here, right? But in the course, you have 6 diagnostic questions, which means that you will be able to get that much fine-grained feedback. Likewise, absolute values. In this session, we had 2 questions. In the actual course, you have 10 questions. And look at the kind of feedback that you get. I know you can't read exactly from the screen, but on the basis of those 10 questions, we tell you whether you are required to go through concept number 1 through concept number 5, or can you skip those concepts, which is why, preparing through quant course at e-GMAT is the most efficient and effective way of preparation, because you are learning what you are supposed to be learning, nothing more, nothing less. Why nothing more? Because again, your goal is you have to get to that target GMAT score, right? There are multiple combinations of scores possible, right? So why to continue working on something which you're not required to work on, right? So again, you trust the diagnostics tell you what is it that you have to do, and then you move forward. Just follow along the course recommendations. That is the way to learn the right way. Okay, now let's do a quick concept recap. Okay, okay, let's do a quick concept recap. And as I said, I can't be teaching you all these concepts, but you've just looked at the course architecture. Feel free to log into your e-GMAT account and just look at the course architecture there, and then make sure that you access the course the right way. Okay, so question number 1, this was a simple question on linear inequalities, and let me bring back the poll here real quick. I won't be discussing this for too long. Yeah. So majority of you got this question correct. Some of you were not able to finish the question, which means that you need to learn the basics, and that's absolutely fine. I mean, that's the feedback that you're here for, right? So definitely go and look at the concept file pertaining to linear inequalities. And there are 3 concept files, if I remember correctly. Now, question number 2. Question number 2 was again 2 linear inequalities with 2 variables. Okay, now here the basic concept that we were testing you on was that, do you know how to solve 2 linear inequalities in 2 variables? Do you know that you can add 2 inequalities if they are with the same sign? Do you know all of that? So again, only 57% of the class could answer this question correctly. For those of you who were not able to answer, look at the solution. But again, even if you don't follow along the solution here because you are confused, okay, why is this happening? We have explained all the whys and the hows in the course. So definitely look at the course so that you can understand this concept. Now, question number 3, this is where we went back to single inequality in single variable. But here, the important thing over here was that whenever you're multiplying both sides of inequality with a negative number, you need to flip the sign. Okay, how many of you are aware of this concept? And let me get the yes no poll here. How many of you are aware of this concept, that if you are once again, that if you multiply both sides of inequality with a negative number, you need to flip the sign? Okay, So for those of you who are not aware, then this is a concept that you need to learn from the course. Now, how many of you actually know the reason, or you know exactly why is it that you have to flip the sign? Okay, so for those of you who don't know why the sign has to be flipped, then you definitely need to understand that by going through the course. Okay, if you simply know the concept that I have to flip the sign, then your understanding is, but without knowing why, then you will always doubt yourself when you are in the test environment. Do I flip the sign here? Is that what the condition was? I don't want you guys to have that kind of, I don't want you guys to second guess yourself in the exam environment, which is why we make sure that we teach you the whys and the hows of each and every concept. Okay. So again, experience that as you go through the algebra course. Okay. Now, next, we move to the quadratic inequality here. So there is a very specific way of solving quadratic inequalities, and the way is built on a very fundamental principle that, you know, product of two numbers, if in this case, if it's the inequality is that the product of these two numbers is greater than 0. So you simply apply your understanding of numbers, operations on numbers. When is a product of two numbers greater than 0? When either both are positive or both are negative, right? So you utilize that principle, you come up with those two cases, you utilize that principle, and you come up with the ranges. Okay, that's the basic principle behind solving a quadratic inequality. Now, applying that principle, what you can do is you can arrive at this very quick method, which is a wavy line method. Okay, so essentially, in the course, we teach you the basic principle behind a quadratic inequality, which is really product of two numbers, whether greater than 0 or less than 0, you come up with cases. So we teach you that, right? And then we are using that principle, we arrive at this very efficient method, which is the wavy line method, so that when you are in the exam environment, when solving this quadratic inequality is one of the 5 things that you have to do, let's say in a DS question or even in a problem solving question, then you're not thinking about, you know, doing that step-by-step thing as from the basic principles. Now, because you understand the basic principles after having gone through those concept files, you now apply the wavy line method, right? How many of you are aware of, how many of you feel comfortable with the quadratic inequality solution? You know the whys and the hows. So some of you are not. Okay, so then again, course is the right thing for you to do so that you understand the whys and the hows. Okay, now wavy line method, not many of you would know, but even if, what I've seen in my experience, even if you know the wavy line method, because you're not clear about how the wavy line has to be drawn, because you're not clear about the why part, you get confused in the exam environment. How many times has it happened for people who know the wavy line method that you don't know how to draw the wavy line? Should I start from the bottom? Should I start from the top? You don't know which side of the which range to consider for the inequality. That happens with a lot of students if they don't know the why aspect of the wavy line method. Now you learn all of that in the concept files, and because you master those concepts right there, right at the right time, when you reach process skill files, GMAT skill files, you are able to answer question within the timed constraints. Okay, that's why at e-GMAT we believe in mastery of a particular concept before moving on to the next stage of learning. Okay, so if you think about it, the entire quant course is split into 5 stages of learning. The first 5 stages of learning for mastery. The first one is you learn the concepts. The second one is that you build your process skills. Third one is you build your GMAT skills. Fourth one is you now apply everything on medium level questions in cementing. And then the fifth one is you now apply all of that in timed constraints on hard questions, right? So that's how you are able to go from, you know, whether you are at Q30 to Q50 or Q40 to Q50, right? Okay, now the next one over here, question number 5, again, it is the range of the values that we are talking about, but in this case you have you have this rational inequality. Now, very simple thing over here. How many of you actually multiplied both sides by x plus 4 and got x is less than 3? Some of you did that. Now, if you did that, this means that you were not able to apply the principle that you know of from linear inequalities. What's the principle that we know from linear inequalities? That we cannot, if you're multiplying both sides by a negative number, then we need to flip the sign of the inequality. Now tell me, in this case, do we know whether x plus 4 is a positive number or a negative number? Do we know that? Tell me, do we know anything about x plus 4? No, we don't, which means that we cannot multiply both sides by x plus 4 and get rid of x plus 4. Why? Because we don't know whether we need to flip the sign or not, right? Which is why, to circumvent that lack of knowledge in the regarding x plus 4, what we do is we multiply both sides by x plus 4 whole squared. When we do that, we know that if it's whole squared, it means that it cannot be a negative number. So now we are confident that the sign of our inequality is not going to change. Okay, and we end up getting a quadratic inequality, which we quickly solve using the wavy line method. Right? So this is how, now again, only half of the class could get this answer correct. Now again, I have my doubts that even that half of the class may not have gotten to the correct answer for the right reason. And I just see, awesome, I guessed this one because I got stuck. Again, if you guessed this one, this means that your conceptual clarity was not correct. So thank you for your message came right at the right point, you know, because again, answering the questions right, correctly answering the question for the right reasons is very, very important. Okay, so don't give yourself credit. Be hard on yourself. Okay. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but I want you, each one of you, to be held on very, very high expectations. Be very hard on yourself. If you missed even a single step, but you ended up answering the question correctly during your preparation, I don't want you to give yourself credit for that. Okay, I froze when I saw this, not gonna lie. Absolutely agreed. I used to freeze when I would see questions like these, but only when I got to the bottom of, okay, what is actually happening here, right? And you'll see that's how the course has been designed, because, you know, when you, it's the same principle that you learned in linear inequalities, and that's the principle that you're applying here in a rational inequality, okay? And which is why the course goes through the teaching philosophy by starting you from the basics and then building upon those concepts. And again, teaching you the whys is very, very important. Okay, and if you know the whys, you'll see that, you know, such things will happen really quickly. Okay, and that's the whole beauty of that conceptual clarity. Okay, now question number 6. Absolute value question. Again, if you know the whys behind absolute values, you will be able to answer this question correctly. Straightforward application of absolute values. Okay, now let me go to question number wait a minute. Yeah, okay, so there are 2 ways over here. Question number 7. This was a very interesting question. Now less than half of the class got this question correct. Now all we are saying over here is, see, what can be inferred if mod of p minus q is equal to a minus b? Here you simply have to apply the definition of modulus of a number. Now yes, if you guys, how many of you saw this and said, oh my goodness, there are 4 variables and just one equation, and that too a modulus equation? How many of you got scared just looking at the question? And let me get the yes no poll here. How many of you got bewildered just looking at the question, and it went in your head that, you know, 4 variables, one equation, that to an absolute value equation? Now this happens when you're not very clear with the whys behind the concept. Okay, now if you just take a step back and, you know, take a deep breath, look at the answer choices. What is the answer? What are the answer choices about? They are not about give me the values of A, B, P, and Q. They are about relationships between A and P, A and B, or Q and B, right? They're simply about relationships. So you take a deep breath. Okay, I can solve this. Okay, now you look at what the question is saying, and that's where you translate. A minus B is equal to modulus of a number. You translate P minus Q into a number. Okay, Now, what do I know about modulus of a number? Modulus of a number is a non-negative number. That's what I know, which means a minus b is a non-negative number, right? Which means a minus b is greater than or equal to 0, which means a is greater than or equal to b. Simple, straightforward. Now, what did it take? All it took was just making sure that you know the whys behind absolute values. Do you see this? I mean, this is very important, because if you just knowing absolute values is not enough, okay? Knowing why the concept of absolute value exists, what is the rationale behind it, that is the level of clarity that each one of you needs to have if you are targeting that Q49, that Q50. Okay, because that is what is going to set you apart from the test taking population. That is what is going to get you to that 90th percentile. Does this make sense? Comments here. We are at the end of the concept level questions. Comments here. What do you guys think? Let me get the chat pod here. For people who thought that you have good conceptual clarity, what do you think? For people who do not have good conceptual clarity, do you feel more confident that, okay, now I can go and learn the whys and the hows, and I can be all equipped to answer difficult questions correctly? I'm going to take a sip of water while you guys type in your responses. Understand the why behind the concept. Good, Kate. Ayush, very nice that you got your concepts brushed up. Kartika, Aryan, feeling confident, very good. PC1, this question is easier than it appears, and as long as you understand the concept of absolute values, then this becomes extremely quick. Absolutely. I kind of feel more clarity. I'll need to get myself more enlightened with the concept. The explanations are good, but the last question is still really confusing. So Samuel, if you are still confused about the last question, then it's very likely that you don't understand the why behind the absolute value, right? So I would definitely want you to go and look at the algebra course, right? So that you can learn the whys, okay? Maston, if you're lost, then it's very likely that you need to learn from the basics, okay? Shubh, how to break a threshold of Q48? You figure out where you're lacking. Figure out from not just am I lacking in arithmetic or algebra or geometry, what topic am I lacking in? That too, you know, am I lacking in conceptual understanding, or am I lacking in the process skills, or am I lacking in GMAT skills, right? So get to that level, okay? Is it worth buying the enhanced score report? Kartika, depends on where you're at, okay? If you feel that you're strong in one, it depends on what your score is. So if you can tell me your score in the Q&A part, not in this, then I can definitely help you answer that question, okay? All right, so with this, we have wrapped up our conceptual understanding, okay? Now what we are going to do is we are going to see how can we apply these concepts on questions which are a little bit more involved, not too involved. We are still not talking about 700 level questions. We are still talking about, I would say, 600 to 650 level questions, okay? So we are going to talk about that, and then we'll proceed further, okay? Kartika, Q44, I don't believe you need to order ESR, okay? I would say that if you go through PC1 has a different opinion. I would say the reason why I'm saying you don't need an ESR is that's okay, PC1, absolutely fine. The only reason, and which is why I want to explain why I'm saying what I'm saying. Kartika, from your ESR, what you're going to get is what your arithmetic and your algebra geometry score splits are, right? You may get information about timing as well. So timing information may not be that important, because if you are weaker in certain aspect, then again you will take longer to do that. Had you been at Q49, then I would have said definitely get that, so that we can figure out, is it your conceptual clarity, or is it the timing aspect that has led to your Q48 or Q49. But Q44 means that you have conceptual gaps, right? So what I would say is I would want you to, and because the entire quant course is pace enabled, which means that you go through every module, every course, every module, and you take the diagnostics, right? So you'll be able to figure out which part of the course you need to do, which part of the course you can skip. That's the reason why I'm saying you don't necessarily need to look at the ESR, because the course itself is going to personalize based on your diagnostic performance. Okay. Shub, Q on Six Sigma, near simulation of Q, GMAT, or tougher? I would say it's slightly tougher, not too much, slightly tougher. And the reason for that is because a lot of our target target customers aim for that Q51, right? Or Q50 or Q51. So we tend to be little bit higher, not too much, okay? But again, the insights that you get from the Sigma X mock, they will be absolutely wonderful, okay? All right, so now let's go to process skills. Sorry for that little segue. I took that question from Kartika because it would have applied to other folks as well, right? Now, let's come back to this. Let's get into question solving mode once again. And how many choices we have? 4 choices. So here is your question. Click on still solving. Now, I will say this, for those of you who are not very clear with concepts, you guys may face some problems in solving these difficult questions correctly, okay? But I want you guys to be to still continue in the session so that you can see how the process skills make a huge difference. Okay, so even if you answer questions incorrectly, that's fine. Just stick around, consider this to be a lecture for you so that you understand the relevance of process skills so that you can utilize the course the right way. Okay, all right, so here's the question. Go ahead. No, I'm here, guys. I'm just on mute because you guys are solving this question. You guys are able to see the question, right? Lucas says that he's not able to. And Maston thought that the session is over. No, I'm right here. Okay. All right. So Lucas and Maston, you may have to join back. Thank you, PC1. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. I would say 10 more seconds and then I'm going to end the poll. All right. So my question here, what all values can M take? Type in over here in the chat box. No. Answer this question here. All integers greater than 0, all integers greater than or equal to 0, all real numbers. Okay, so you were typing that 3. Got it. Got it. All integers. Okay. See, it's saying, and that's where you have to read the question statement. The question statement is saying non-negative integral values, which means that m can take all the values greater than or equal to 0. Okay, very, very important to understand the constraints here, right? Now, when you solve the inequalities over here, all you have, these are two linear inequalities in two variables. You just have to apply the principle of how is it that you solve two linear inequalities in two variables. That's the concept, right? When you do that concept, what you see is that m is less than 2.5. How many of you were able to get to this solution over here? M is, if your conceptual clarity is there, then you would be able to get to this part that m is less than 2.5. How many of you were able to get to that? Or how many of you were not able to get to m less than 2.5? People who were not able to get to m less than 2.5, they don't have the conceptual clarity, right? Sorry, I should not be changing my questions like that. Now, everybody got to m less than 2.5, yet only 27% of you were able to answer the question correctly. The answer over here is 3, which is choice C. Okay, rest of you answered this question incorrectly. Why? Because you did not take into consideration the constraint over here of the non-negative integral values, which means that you're going to have 0, 1, and 2. Okay, a number of you, equal number of people selected choice B. You guys thought 1 and 2 are the only numbers possible. You did not consider 0 as a non-negative integer. Okay, comments over here. For those of you who selected choice B, let me get the chat over here. For those of you who selected choice B, your comments. So again, from conceptual clarity wise, because you got to m less than 2.5, no problems at all. But Kriti, thank you for elaborating over here. Because you did not translate that non-negative integer into that m is greater than or equal to 0, you got this question wrong. And this is a 600 level question. And why did you get this question wrong? Because you did not apply the process skill of constraints. You rushed. Now, let me ask you one more question. Now, Bhuvan also says that he did not consider 0. That's again, you did not translate correctly. Non-negative integers needed to be translated to m greater than or equal to 0. Okay. Then the next thing is you have to, what PC1, okay, then not considering that at all, m is greater than or equal to 0, is that you did not consider constraints. Okay. Samuel Dressman, you saying you selected choice C, but you didn't change the sign. Okay, so that's a conceptual issue. Okay, which means that you answered this question incorrectly for the wrong reason. Now you have a conceptual issue. Okay, so guys, do you see how one single question can give? I mean, there are 4 people who told why they answered this question incorrectly. Now the reason behind answering this question incorrectly are different for different people, right? Kriti and Bhuvan did not consider constraints. Okay, actually Kriti did not consider constraints. Bhuvan had a conceptual issue had a translation issue, because he did not translate non-negative to include 0. Okay, PC1 was not focused. Okay, so there's nothing with regards to constraints over here. PC1 was just not focused. Okay, Kriti, again, we already talked about it. You're saying you rushed, and I'm most likely, when you would be solving this question on your own, you would brush aside this thing, oh, I just rushed. I'm not going to rush in the exam environment. Is that correct? How many of you would have come to the conclusion that you answered this question incorrectly because of a silly mistake? Right. So Kriti, if you're saying that you're always rushing, and Nicholas, Ayush, Anirukta, if you're saying that you would have considered, Abhishek, if you're saying that you would have considered this as a silly mistake, then you are losing the opportunity to make amends to increase your ability, because you're not specifying why is it that you made that silly mistake. Again, you have to get to the bottom of why so that you can come up with corrective actions. The whys are important everywhere, okay? The root cause analysis is very, very important. You guys apply, majority of you would be doing root cause analysis in your day-to-day work life, right? That is what is required over here in your GMAT preparation also, at the very question level, whether that question is 500 level, 600 level, 700 level, 750 level question. Why did I get this question wrong? Okay, which is where the importance of error log comes into picture. All the e-GMAT students here, I want you guys to take the error log very, very seriously and understand one thing: rushing, silly mistakes, absolutely not allowed. Okay, there is, in e-GMAT vocabulary, silly mistakes, silly word does not exist. There is no mistake that's a silly mistake. And if you see yourself classifying a mistake as silly mistake, that means you're not getting to the bottom of why is it that you made a mistake. Okay, Frank, rushing is really addictive mistake. And Deepak, you're right. Rushing is not a problem. It's a symptom. Thank you for saying that. So Frank, you have to you have to slow down. Okay, because if you don't slow down, you won't be able to understand where you're making a mistake. Okay, that should be the biggest learning for you, Frank. If your conceptual clarity is clear, which is indicative in the fact that you scored 100% in concepts, but I would still want you to go through the concept diagnostics in the course as well. But if that's set, then that means you need to slow down, because when you slow down, you're able to see things in a lot clearer light. Okay, all right, so let's move to the next question now. Okay, but good discussion, guys. I'm very happy with the way you guys are interacting with me and interacting with each other. That's really very nice. And that collaborative learning is very, very important, because it's one thing for me to say something, but it's another thing when, you know, the fellow GMAT test takers, you know, add their inputs. That really takes the understanding to another level. So thank you so much for that. Good interaction here. Can I miss last 3 to 4 questions on Q, app Q, and expect Q48 plus? Absolutely no, show. That means you are not doing appropriate time management. Okay. Rishabh, again, you're making a mistake somewhere. I'm not going into the solution right now. So I want you to, so again, I have gone through the, so I'm going to share this presentation with you so that you can look at this. Yeah, thank you, Deepak. Yeah. All right, so now let's take a look at question number 2. Go ahead. Okay, last 2 minutes, last 10 seconds. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. Okay. So again, for those of you who were not able to solve this question, or those of you who selected choices D and E, some conceptual issues, right? Because if you took this long to solve this question, then that means you're not clear about how do you approach linear inequalities, which is fine. Again, we already came to that conclusion that you need to work on your conceptual clarity. But from the standpoint of learning, the learning that I want you guys to have is why people, the correct answer over here is, I won't say what the correct answer is. If you look at the poll here, and if you go with the majority, you would think that, okay, 34% more people have selected choice A than B. This means choice A will be the correct answer. I want you to notice, can X be negative 5.5? What does the question statement say? What does the question statement say? Right? It says that it's an integer X. It's an integer, which means that X cannot be negative 5.5, which means that the correct answer here is choice B. Right? Now look at this. Same thing again. You have, because you did not consider the constraints, even if the folks who knew, the 11 of you or the 34% of you who answered this question, even if you knew the concept of how is it that you solve linear inequalities, you would have answered this question incorrectly. Now, is this a silly mistake? Yes or no? Before attending this session, no, PC1, it's not silly mistake. It's a mistake that you have to, you did not consider constraints, right? Again, with a silly mistake, you can never have a corrective action, right? I want you to learn that. Remove the word silly from your dictionary as far as GMAT is concerned. In fact, silly word should not be there at all. There's no question that's a silly question. Okay, if there is a question, that means there is a reason behind that question, and the reason cannot be that, that it's a silly question. Okay, so again, coming back to this, always make it a point. Promise yourself, right? Promise yourself that whenever you are solving a quant question, you will take extra 5 seconds to look for constraints in the question statement, and you're going to make a note of that, those constraints on your scratch pad, big and bold. Promise yourself that, and you're going to see how much you are going to improve. Okay, read the question statement. The problem that a number of students do is they look at the inequality. They get that adrenaline rush and they say, oh, I have to solve this inequality, and they start doing it. And then the first answer they get, they select the appropriate choice without keeping in mind that, oh, there was a constraint there that I had to consider. How many of you get in that mode? Look at the stuff, look at the equations, inequality, start solving it. Whatever is the first answer, select that. Stop doing that. Okay, it's good that you're recognizing all of that over here in this session where nothing is at stake, right? So that you are able to now take this further. Nicholas, if your math was not just fast enough, then that means you need to work on concepts, right? And which is, again, if you selected D, E, or you were still solving, absolutely fine. You have the whole course to take you from where you're at to Q49, Q50. Okay? Okay? We can do this, absolutely. There's no such thing as mistakes. Just learn from the mistakes, absolutely. Okay, so Samuel, very good. I'm glad that you talked about this. To come to think of it, I got x greater than -2 and x greater than -2. You should have gotten x less than -2. So Samuel, you're again making
those mistakes of not flipping the sign, right? So again, that's a concept that you have to learn. So again, people who have to learn those concepts, don't get disheartened at all. Okay, so again, setting the right expectations is very important. Now the feedback for you all is that you need to learn the concepts, you need to learn these process skills. Make a note of what is it that the question statement says in terms of constraints. And I know I'm repeating myself. I'll continue repeating myself till the end of the session, because I know you guys need to hear that again and again so that you don't make those mistakes. Okay, repetition is important. Okay, so very nice. Now let's move on to the next question, and let me clear these answers. Here you go. Click on still solving, please. All right. Now for this one, I'm going to end the poll, and then I'm going to show you another question. Okay, now let me show you. Yes. So click on still solving, please. And I'm going to show you question number 4, which is another version of the same question, but just look at the question statement intently. Go ahead. Okay, last few seconds. Can you guys hear me? Hello? Okay, you can. All right. I don't know why it said mic disconnected. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to end the poll here. Now let's look at question number 3, and I'm going to bring back the poll for question number 3. Because again, both these questions were very similar. So for those of you, again, for those of you who did not select choices A and D, there is definitely conceptual issues. So you need to learn how to solve quadratic inequalities. Okay, that's something. Now let's look at z square. What do you know about z square? And this is for everybody. Tell me, what do you know about z square? It's always non-negative, not just positive PC1. It's always non-negative. Aryan, very important. Deepak, not just positive. It's greater than or equal to 0. Show. Okay. Yes. Okay. Good. Good. Non-negative. Again, don't forget that. Okay. So we know that. Now I want all of you who selected choice A as the correct answer. Do you think that z square can take any value that is, let's say, -3, -2.5? Can z square take that value at all? For those of you who selected choice A. So, whoever selected choice A, what mistake did you do? Ayush, Abhishek, Anirukta. Who else selected choice A? Bhuvan, Kenneth, Kimi. Sorry, I am cold calling here. Lucas, choice A. Moksha, choice A. Payal, choice A. Samuel, Shai. Again, I'm stopping now. Okay. So for those of you who selected choice A, what mistake did you do? Forgot about the non-negative constraint of z squared, Kimi. Absolutely right. Now, what does this say? I misread the question statement. I thought it says Z. Okay, Frank, another mistake, right? Good. Now again, see, choice A, both Kimi and Frank selected choice A, but the reason for that was different. Okay, Abhishek's reason is same as Kimi's reason. Okay, Maurya's reason is same as Frank's reason, right? Which is why the error logs are very important, because now your corrective action is going to be different. For Frank and Maurya, the corrective action is going to be, I need to write down what is it that the question is asking me. The question is asking me about the range of values of z squared, which means I need to write down in my scratch pad, big, bold, z squared is equal to question mark. Okay, that's the corrective action for mistake, for the reason behind why Frank and Maurya made the mistake. Okay, now the reason for Bhuvan, Abhishek and Kimi, you guys made the mistake because you forgot to apply the constraint of z squared, right? For you guys, it's very important to understand that not only are the constraints that are explicitly stated in the question statement important, also the conceptual constraints are very important, and that's a lot of that happens in algebra, because you have squared, because you have modulus, so there are those conceptual constraints that you need to apply. Okay, that's very important. All right, now let's look at, so again, this question. Now, after that, let's take a look at our question number 4. So I'm going to bring back question number 4 here as well. And this is where, mark your answer here. Okay. Now, question number 4, the correct answer is choice C, but look at the number of people who have selected choice D as the correct answer as well. Okay, so here again you have, what do you have? You have, z is an integer, which means that the only two values z squared can take are 0 and 1, which means that the correct answer is choice 2. So if you answered the previous question incorrectly, then you will likely answer this question incorrectly as well. Okay. Also, if you don't consider, you may consider 2 as one of the values as well. In that case, you would have selected choice D as the correct answer. Okay, you read Z again, Kriti says that, right? So I'm going to pause here. This is the end of our second section, which is process skills. Now, tell me, we solved 4 questions and the accuracy for these questions was really low, less than 30% in almost all the 4 questions, if my memory serves right. Why is the reason for that? What is the reason for that? Now again, these are not questions that are 700 level, no. So why is it that your accuracy was lower in these questions? Constraints are very important, okay? Vj, z squared cannot be less than or equal to 0. Now again, I will be sharing this PPT with you for those of you who have questions about how did we get to this, or can this thing work? Send me an email so that we can respond to those questions, okay? But right now I want you to focus on how is it that you can fix these problems, okay? Constraints, application of concept, missing details, missing implying the constraints. Yes. Now how do you fix that? The way to fix that is to first have complete clarity, the whys and the hows from concept level, then learning how to apply those concepts on process skills, okay, using process skills, and then taking those learnings into GMAT skills, okay. So each and every module in quant course, whether it's in algebra, whether it's in number properties or word problems or geometry or advanced topics, starts off from a diagnostic, right? As we said earlier, as we saw earlier, that to 2-layer diagnostics. Then we teach you the concepts, okay, the pertinent concepts that you require. Then we teach you how do you apply those concepts. First, we teach you through a learning activity wherein you solve a question, you see the solution, you learn from it, you apply those learnings to the next question. So very guided learning activity. Then you apply that on your own on practice quizzes. Okay, so that's what we do here. Then you move on to solving GMAT skill questions, right? So each and every module is built on that. Okay, now we're going to go and look at the GMAT skill questions. So now these are going to be 700 level questions, and again, setting the expectation right. If you have conceptual issues, you may not be able to solve these questions, okay? Do not get disheartened, right? Just learn from the mistakes that people who have the right conceptual understanding are making, so that you don't make the mistakes once you have learned the concepts, right? So I just want to make sure that we set the expectation right. And then know that you can go through the Quant 2.0 course so that you can learn how to bridge these gaps. Okay. So now so I see there's some discussion going on with regards to another question over here. I would say maybe record a quick video, send that to us so that we can answer your question. Okay. You can send it to support@e-gmat.com. Okay. And I will be sharing this presentation with you. And again, if you go through the course, your doubts will be addressed. All right, so let's, I'm going to reopen the poll, clear the answers, click on still solving, please. Now this question is a bit involved. Be very careful. There are 2 linear inequalities. Again, you need to know how to solve linear inequalities in 2 variables. Be sure to not make a mistake in terms of the concepts that you already know. Okay, so go ahead, solve this question, read the question statement very carefully, okay, and go slow. Go ahead. All right, I'm going to give you 15 more seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. So as you can see, 1/3 of the class could not finish solving the question. And as I said, this is a bit more involved question. Then I see the correct answer here is choice E, which only 1/3 of the class was able to select. Now I'm going to show you the solution, and I want you all to make sure that there are multiple points of failure in this question. The first point of failure, and the initial points of failures are because of the lack of conceptual understanding, which is, how do you solve two linear inequalities in two variables? Can you add the two inequalities? When can you add them? Do you remember to flip the sign of the inequality when you're multiplying both sides by negative numbers? So those things come into play in terms of the conceptual clarity, right? Which again, if you go through the course, you will understand the whys and the hows, so that by the time you come to these questions, you will be comfortable solving those. Now, from the GMAT skill standpoint, why is it that only 1/3 of the class was able to answer the question correctly? Because of the constraints, because of the process skills over here. There are two main process skills that you have to apply. One is drawing an inference. Now what you get from your conceptual clarity, what you get is that x is less than 8 and y is greater than 6. So my question will be, how many of you were able to get to that point? Because we need to understand where is it that you guys faltered here. So how many of you were able to get to the point that x is less than 8 and y is greater than 6? So this is what I'm talking about here, that you got to this point. Let me just change the color. X is less than 8 and y is greater than 6. Okay, so about 74% of you who are responding were able to get to this point. Okay, now from here, you have to draw the inference, because now why is that inference needed? Because see, you need to figure out the positive difference between the minimum possible values of x and y. So from here, you infer that if x is less than 8 and if x and y are positive integers, using these two bits of information, this number 1 and here number 2, you come to the inference that x is equal to 1. How many of you were able to draw that inference, that x is equal to 1? So again, you can see way fewer people were able to draw that inference that x is equal to 1. So that's the process skill issue over here. The next inference is that if y is greater than 6 and if y is a positive integer, then the minimum value of y is 7. Next question, how many of you were able to draw this inference, that minimum value of y is equal to 7? So good. More people were able to draw the inference with regards to minimum value of y than with regards to minimum value of x. So you know what kind of mistakes you guys are doing, right? And there's a lot to learn from the fellow GMAT test takers. That's the beauty of being in this environment, because you're able to learn from other people's mistakes so that you don't commit these mistakes when you are faced with the same question, or maybe with a different question with a similar application. Right now, that was mistake number 1. So mistake number 1 was conceptual clarity, right? Mistake number 2 is at this point wherein you're not able to draw the inference, right? Now the last mistake happens at this translation, that what you need is the positive difference between minimum possible value of x and minimum possible value of y. Okay, so think of the nested questions, nested information in this question statement. Okay, so this question is a 700 level plus question. Why? Because first of all, the concept itself is a little bit more involved. Solving linear inequalities in two variables, wherein you have to flip the sign and all of that stuff happening. So the concept itself is a little bit more difficult, right? Add to that the inferences that you have to draw considering the constraints, considering the information that you have in the question statement, you have to draw those inferences. Then what the final answer is not simply difference between the values of x and y, but positive difference between the minimum possible values of x and the minimum possible value of y, right? So positive difference, which means that you have to take the absolute value of the difference that you're getting. So it's a layered question. Now, what are your learnings from this question? Comments about this one. This is the first 700 level question. This is a problem solving question. So we are still in the realm of questions which we are more comfortable seeing. The next set of questions are going to be data sufficiency question, which itself adds that layer of complexity. But look at the layers, the multiple layers of complexity here, and think about how is it that you need to prepare in order to combat these layers of complexity, and how that solid why and how behind the concepts, the solid experience of how is it that you apply the process skills are integral to solving these such questions correctly. And by solving these questions correctly, you get to that Q49, that Q50. If you guys understand this, my job over here is done. Good, Aryan. And again, you have to build slowly. You build the conceptual understanding, you build your process skills, and then you're able to apply all of that. Maiva, always feel that there is a lot to have in mind while working on a question. So Maiva, if that feeling is, if the feeling of that being overwhelmed, right? If you are getting overwhelmed by solving such questions, then you have to go back to the basics. You have to understand what is it that I need to work on, which is where the two-layer diagnostics and the architecture of the PACE-enabled quant course comes into picture. Frank, if you got stuck on X, then that means there is some level of some more practice you need with regards to solving inequalities. Okay. Again, I don't know whether you're saying X is equal to 1, you got stuck there, or what. Remembering to flip the inequalities if you're working with negatives is so crucial. Absolutely, Kartika. The time pressure is intense. Kate, time pressure comes into picture if you're crumbling under time pressure, then that means there is something not quite right with your understanding, the whys and the hows. Okay. Moria, conceptually solved all questions, but still made 2 mistakes as I didn't read the question carefully. Absolutely. And again, you have to get to the bottom of it. Which process skill did you miss applying? Okay. All right. Now let's move to data sufficiency. That's a very, very important question type. About half of the questions are data sufficiency questions. And because, and these are more feared. Why? Because we are not used to seeing these questions. But once you get the hang of data sufficiency questions, they are the most beautifully crafted questions in quant. Okay, I really enjoy solving data sufficiency question because it's almost like solving a mystery. Okay, how many of you have gone through the data sufficiency concept that we have in quant basics course? Again, that's a question for the e-GMAT students. How many of you have gone through the data sufficiency concept files? One full module is actually dedicated on how to solve data sufficiency question and the logic behind those. So if you have not as yet gone through those, then I would strongly recommend that you go through those modules. Okay. Now, how do you solve data sufficiency questions? Again, you do a very thorough question statement analysis. You have to know exactly what is it that the question is asking you. Okay. Then you do statement 1 analysis independently. Then you forget about statement 1 and you do statement 2 analysis independently. If both the statements are not sufficient, right, then you combine those and then you figure out whether you can answer the question correctly or not. Okay. That's how you solve data sufficiency question. Okay. Now, there is some discussion about the timing part. Nicholas, frankly, I don't know how much time I'm giving you guys. As I said, I look at when about, 30 50%, or in this case, when 60% of people have solved the question for difficult questions, I give you guys a 10 to 15-second warning. Okay. In the exam environment, timing is a whole different ballgame, and I don't want us to get into that right now. There is a lot to cover before we get into test readiness, and that's where I want you guys to understand that preparation for GMAT has to be done in stages. I don't want any of you to start timing yourself, keeping in mind what the final time is going to be in the exam environment. If you start doing that, then you're setting yourself up for failure. Why am I saying that? Because right now you have to go slow. You have to learn where you're making mistakes. Because if you start going fast, then you're not going to be able to focus on making mistakes, or on the mistakes that you're making. And you'll inadvertently make mistakes that are absolutely unavoidable if you are going slow. Okay, so build your ability. As your ability gets built, you will start to see that you'll solve questions in less and less time. And you can see that if you know the whys and the hows of each and every concept, if you know how to solve linear inequalities, and if you've practiced it enough using the concept practice quizzes, using the concept files, then there is no reason why you will take more time when that concept is tested on a GMAT skill question, on a 700 level question. So understand that aspect. Is that clear? Moria, Nicholas, and yeah, Moria and Nicholas, you guys are talking about the timing aspect, right? Okay, good. Now, let's come back to data sufficiency. Okay, here's the question, and let me clear the answers here. Yeah, click on still solving, please. Last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. How was this question? Were you confident about this question? Were you thinking twice about it? Okay, all right. Seems like people made a mistake and realized very soon and changed my answer. Okay, I want to see who this is so that I can see whether your answer was correct or not. Hold on, Kartika said that. Let's see. Okay, right, Kartika. Good, you made the right decision. What was, so I'm going to ask you, what change did you make? Okay. Feels like I'm racing against you guys more than the clock. Yes, I can see that. Want to change to C now. Okay. Made my brain function harder. Okay. All right. Good. Now, this is a very simple question. I know it may not seem like, but this is a very simple question. Let's see why. Look at what the question is asking. Is z positive? And what is it that we know about z? That z can take values from -5 to -2 to +5. How many of you got to this point? How many of you got to this point? Okay, let me ask this question the other way. How many of you did not arrive at this conclusion here? How many of you were not able to arrive at this understanding that z goes from -5 to +5? So there were some of you. Okay, so that means again, this is a conceptual gap. Okay, understand the why behind the positive, the absolute values. Okay, that's the why part. Okay, now let's move on to the next one here. What does z minus 2, mod of z minus 2 greater than 3 mean? Now this part is simply giving me an absolute value inequality. So from the conceptual standpoint, if I know how do I translate this into range of z, I can figure out then whether this statement is sufficient or not. So the concept over here is solving absolute value inequality. No second thoughts about it. Now, what I get from here is that z is greater than 5 or z is less than -1. Okay, so z can be both positive and negative. How many of you arrived at this conclusion? And you said, okay, because z can be both positive and negative, this statement is not sufficient. How many of you thought that? So here is so if you are saying, okay, so if you're saying this inference is not correct, then click on yes. If you're saying that this inference is correct, then click on no. I know it seems little it seems a little opposite here. So select, so I'm just going 1 translates to yes, 2 translates to no. That's how I'm doing. Okay. So this inference is correct. More people think that this inference is correct. Okay. But what about the original statement? What did the question statement say? The question statement said that z goes from -6 to 6, right? Goes from -5 to +5, right? Now look at z greater than 5. If z is greater than 5, which means that there is no integral value between 5 and 6, right? Which means that this case is not positive at all. Is not possible at all. That z is greater than 5 given the constraints of z from the question statement. Which means that according to, if statement 1 is true, given the constraints of z from the question statement, then this statement is telling me that all values are negative, which means that statement 1 is sufficient. What do you guys make of this? Thoughts about this one? Because only 30% of you selected A as the correct answer, well, D as the correct answer as well, which means that only 15 of you thought that statement 1 is sufficient. So tell me, what's going on here? Where did you falter, or why did you falter? I can tell you why you faltered. You took question statement, you arrived at that the possible values of z going from -5 to +5, but you did not take that into consideration when you analyze statement 1, and that's where you faltered. Okay, absolutely hard to keep track of constraints and also refer back to during solving. Absolutely, VJ, which is why you have to learn process skills and GMAT skills one at a time. You learn how to apply process skills. You get in the habit. It's about developing those good habits to solve questions. Once you know, I mean, see, from conceptual standpoint, is there anything too much involved here? Think about it. Conceptual standpoint, simple absolute value inequalities. If you know absolute value inequalities, you should be able to solve the question, but still only less than 1/3 of the class was able to solve this question. Why? Because you don't have the right habits of documenting information, of drawing inferences, of combining information to draw inferences. And now this is definitely a 700 plus level question, Kartika. Now think about it, how your skills from verbal come into over here. Critical reasoning. You need to draw inferences in critical reasoning using, when you're learning how to solve inference questions, what do? You draw inferences from single statement. You learn how to draw inferences from two statements, from three statements. The same thing you're doing here. You're combining information and you're drawing inferences from not just the statement one, but combining information from the question statement, right? So you have to be in that mode of combining information. With statement 1, z can only be negative, Maiva, because of the constraint that the question statement provides with regards to z. Okay, that is the combination that you were not able to do, which is why people who selected choices B, C, and E were not able to think that, okay, statement 1 is actually sufficient. But guys, this session is more about what habits you need to develop so that you can solve questions, so that you can build your ability in quant. Okay, I want you to focus on that. I want you to understand that part so that you can then utilize, you go and look at the algebra course, the quant course at e-GMAT in that light and see how is it that you can utilize that course to build your ability. That is what I want you guys to think about. Okay. Now, statement number 2. Thank you, Kartika. Yeah. Statement number 2, mod of z is equal to 2. Now, simple translation, z is equal to 2 or negative 2, which means that statement 2 is not sufficient, which means statement 1 is sufficient, which means choice A is the correct answer. Okay. So what I would want you guys to do is, after this session is over, once you get the PDF of this session, go through these questions once again. Look at where you're faltering. Solve these questions once again. You will have the solutions here. You won't have me saying, focus on process skills right when you are looking at the solution. But in the back of your mind, you need to keep in mind how is it that you need to be learning from this. Now, Tati, you're saying you took the right answer, but the way was incorrect. Thank you so much for specifying that. Right? I want you to look at this PDF and understand why your way was incorrect and how is it that you can fix it. Okay. All right. So now let's take a look at question number 3. Guys, how is this going? I know I'm getting your responses, but overall, how is this going? We still have, I think, about 2 more questions. Yeah, 2 more questions to solve. But how is this coming along? What have you learned so far? Kartika, thank you for saying the word trick. I would say trick and silly. Remove both of those from your dictionary. Do me a favor. Why? Because, when you say something is a trick, it means that, again, that's how I perceive it. I somehow feel that a trick works in only certain scenarios, right? But frankly, if you understand the why behind what we are doing, then it's no longer the trick, right? So again, it's just me being very, very nitpicky, very picky about the choice of words. Okay, thank you, Kartika. Tati, try to fix myself on every point of the question. That's the point. Absolutely. Anirukta, understanding where my approach is fundamentally wrong. Absolutely. Samuel, I've learned to build my conceptual skills, handling time pressure also. Frankly, time pressure, Samuel, will come automatically. Nicholas, time pressure will get resolved automatically once your ability is improved. Trust me. I have, the course, if you just have to focus on the course. Lucas, can we recap at some point for students who get 650 level right but struggle 700 level questions? The most effective game plan is, Lucas, going through the course. The course will tell you where you're lagging. Are you lagging in concepts? Are you lagging in process skills? Are you lagging behind in GMAT skills? Just go through one module in the course and you'll understand how the course is going to tell you that yourself. Okay. So read questions carefully, VJ says, and then mark down constraints, absolutely explicit and non-explicit ones, and then solve carefully and check with constraints before choosing. Absolutely, VJ. Very well said. Okay. Now let's go on to question number 3. Go ahead. All right, I'm going to end the poll. Okay, this is something that has not happened before. I think you guys must be tired now. Let me just see. Choice. Okay. How was this question? Was it difficult? Let me get the chat here. Yeah. How was this question? Did you feel that it was difficult as you were solving it? Did it seem doable? What's the impression that you had while you were solving the question? Kartika, again, the word trick. Yes, thank you. Seems straightforward. Yes. Not sure about my answers. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm not going to tell you what the answer is. Let's just look at this and then you guys can tell me what you feel. Mod of a minus b is equal to b minus a. So the question statement doesn't give you anything other than the fact that what all you have to say is a less than b? You have to answer the question, is a less than b? Now, can you get the, if you're getting the answer yes from the statement, yes, I'm confident in all cases a is less than b, then also it's fine. If you're getting the answer from the questions, from the individual statements, that in all scenarios a is less than b, then also that statement is sufficient. That's very important to understand. Is that clear? Whether you get the answer yes or no, as long as it's yes 100% of the case, as long as it's no 100% of the cases, then that statement is sufficient to answer the question. Okay. Now let's look at statement 1. Now this is one of the conceptual questions that you did. How many of you were able to draw the inference that b minus a is greater than or equal to 0? Absolutely good. Very nice. B minus a is greater than or equal to 0. So you already learned that concept, right? Good. You were able to apply that. Now, if b minus a is greater than or equal to 0, this means that there are two cases possible. Either a will be equal to b or a will be less than b, which means that statement 1 is not sufficient. So those of you who selected choices A and D, okay, and there are quite a few of you, okay, 12 of you who selected choices A and D, you both, so you all had concluded that statement 1 is sufficient. So let me take a look at who all selected. Anirukta, Bhuvan, Gaurav, Kriti, Lucas, Maiva, D. Moksha, Ras, and D. Shai, and S. Singh as well, and VJ. So tell me about that. Kriti saying that's what I was worried about. Okay, forgot the equal to. See, Maiva, you forgot the equal to sign. Didn't consider A is equal to B case. So what is the problem here? Is that a silly mistake? That's your conceptual understanding, right? Frank, is not a silly mistake. I don't know what you're saying yes to. Same as Ras, yeah. That's your conceptual understanding. Lucas, don't try to plug in actual numbers. Please don't do that. That method is not a foolproof method. Focus on the basics. Why would you trouble yourself in figuring out what numbers to plug, and instead if you have a very foolproof way of solving questions? Right? So conceptual mistake over here. Lucas, again, which is why, so good. I'm glad that you mentioned that. Now, if you're looking for patterns, that's also not the correct thing. So remove the word patterns also from your dictionary. So 3 words: silly, tricks, and patterns. Why? Because when you're looking for patterns, that means you're not focused on concepts. You're not focused on the methodical way of approaching things. Okay, Lucas? Okay. All right. I know I'm very picky about certain words, but there is a reason why I say that, because there's just so much of noise in the community about, silly mistakes, tricks and tips and these patterns, you need to recognize the patterns. No, you need to just focus on the basics. As long as you learn the whys and the hows of the basics, as long as you are applying that in a methodical manner, there is no reason for you to think about patterns. That's just unnecessarily clogging your brain. Okay. Okay, Nicholas, could you break down how you got statement 1, please? Absolutely. So, Nicholas, go back to our conceptual understanding. What is statement 1 saying? Statement 1 is saying B minus A is equal to modulus of some number. Okay, I understand here it's saying A minus B within that modulus, but forget about what is inside the modulus. All you have to think about is that B minus A is modulus of some number. Okay, now if it's modulus of some number, this means that it is greater than or equal to 0. So you're simply applying the definition of modulus of a number. That's what we did in the conceptual question number 7. Right? So from there you get B is greater than or equal to A, which means there are 2 cases. In one of the cases, A is less than B, but in the other case, A is equal to B, which means that you cannot say for sure whether statement 1 is sufficient or not. Okay, got it? Good. Now let's take a look at second statement. A by B is less than 1. That is given to you. Now, do you know anything about B? Do you know that B is positive or a negative number? We know for sure that B is not 0, because if B were 0, then A by B will not be defined. But do we know anything about whether B is negative or positive? No. Which means that we cannot simply multiply B by both sides, because we don't know whether we need to flip the sign or whether we don't have to flip the sign. Right? So again, your concept, your why behind the concept of whenever you multiply both sides by a negative number, you need to flip the sign, comes in over here. You're applying that concept over here. Okay? So again, your conceptual clarity. Okay, so now what you do is you take 2 cases, and this is where the process skill comes into picture. The concept itself is telling you to apply the process skill of consider all cases. Either the case number 1, B is greater than 0, case number 2, B is less than 0. And then accordingly, you get either A is less than B or A is greater than B. Okay, simple concept. Just you have to be aware, you have to be in the moment, you have to be very clear about how is it that you approach this. Okay, now both the statements are independently are not sufficient. Now are they sufficient together? Okay, now together, if both the statements are to be true, then the only condition in which both the statements will be true will be if A is less than B. And that answers the question. Yes, we are confident that if both these statements are to be true, then A has to be less than B. Okay. Now, the reason why, again, there was only one person who answered this question correctly, and that person has been relatively quiet in the session. So I'm not sure if that person got the answer Munzali, whether he got the answer, he or she got the answer correct for the right reasons, or whether it was a fluke. So definitely type in over here in the chat box, Munzali. But if you guys, because you guys were not able to answer this question correctly, tell me what was the reason behind that. Was that conceptual? Was that not being able to apply process skills? Was that just not being very clear about data sufficiency questions in general? Because there are three different ways of fixing the problem. Okay, so tell me that. Did not consider it could be a negative value. So Kartika, that's a conceptual issue. That's, again, you're not very clear about, with regards to inequalities, how is it that, because so I would strongly suggest you go through linear inequalities, because the amount of practice that you get there, every other question will have this thing tested, right? So it would be ingrained in your mind that if you see something in the denominator, if you're multiplying both and you don't know whether it's a negative or a positive number, then you will make sure that you think about that part. Okay, conceptual about data sufficiency. Abhishek, if it's conceptual about data sufficiency, then you have to get yourself immersed in data sufficiency questions. And for that, I would suggest first going through the data sufficiency module in Quant Basics course. In that module, we actually teach you data sufficiency question using a mystery scenario. It's a very interesting mystery scenario. And if you understand that, what students have told me is that they are now, because they understand data sufficiency questions from with respect to a mystery scenario, they now start to personalize their statements in the questions, keeping in mind that detective, right? So do that. Get the sense of data sufficiency questions. That's very important. If it's process skills, Maiva, then again, you have to go through, you have to write down all the process skills and make sure that you focus your attention on those. Write those things down. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is question number 4. I want you guys to take that as a homework question. Okay, why? Because I want you guys to be very, very clear about, go through this presentation once more, be clear about it, and then answer question number 4 on your own. Everything is there in the slide. And let me just see here. Yeah, I didn't want to show you the question. Okay. It's better this way. Okay. So we've talked about this quite a bit. Okay. Okay, how combining was sufficient. You want me to go back to that? Again, Frank, look at that if both the statements, I think if you're asking that question, that means you're not clear about data sufficiency questions in general. Okay. Essentially, if both the statements have to be true, in what scenario will both the statements be true? That is how you ask that question. So it's drawing that inference. Okay. Now, in terms of how do you score a Q50? Remember, I'm not saying Q51. Q51 is, you can prepare for Q50. Q51 is governed by how you are in that test environment, right? But you can definitely focus towards Q50. For that, I've said it time and again, conceptual clarity, process skill clarity, GMAT skill clarity, right? And you have separate conceptual learning, separate process skill learning, separate GMAT skill learning, okay? So you have to learn in a progressive manner, right? Don't start off with 700 level questions till the time you don't have the whys and the hows of the concepts cleared. Okay, very, very important. Okay. Now, as I said initially, regardless of whether you are Q30, Q20, Q40, Q45, Q49, quant course is the right course for you. Why? Because it's personalized, okay? And there is a reason behind, and again, the success is evident. Look at the number of Q49 scores since the last 1.5 years, okay? You can compare the number of Q49 scores as reported on GMAT Cloud, okay? Just, you know, world of difference, right? Now, we've talked about your quant score. This class has is equally spread, almost uniform distribution, and each one of you requires that unique solution. That goes without saying, right? And again, through our diagnostics, we make sure that you get unique solutions. Now, the entire algebra course has up to 40 hours of content, right? A Q30 student would require all those 40 hours, maybe even more, because they may have to go through content multiple times, right? Q45 student would require only 35 activities. Q49 student would require only 12 activities. Now, how do we determine which activities are required for you? Okay. Lucas, what are these 12 activities? Yes, exactly. That's what I'm telling you right now. Depending upon your ability, you would need different levels of activities, and that's where the PACE-enabled expert architecture comes into picture. That's where the fine-grained diagnostics that are there in every module comes into picture. You first take GMAT skill diagnostic, okay? Then you take concept diagnostic. Now that concept diagnostic tells you which files you need to take, okay? Which concept files you need to take. Do you need to take all the all the 5 concept files, for example, in this absolute values course, or can you do only the last 2 concept files? That is what the concept diagnostic tells you, okay? GMAT skill diagnostic, if you need conceptual diagnostic, then most likely GMAT skill diagnostic will tell you to go through the whole thing, right? But if you are really solid in your concepts, then the GMAT skill diagnostic will tell you, should you be focusing just on the GMAT skill files or also on the process skill files, okay? So it's learning in a progressive manner, and each and every module is built on the same platform using the same architecture, okay? Which means that for each one of you in the session today, your algebra course as defined by the PACE architecture as you take the diagnostics would be different. Okay, in fact, there are these many, upwards of 78,000 courses that are possible just in the algebra course. Okay, that's the beauty of the diagnostic based architecture. Okay, how do you know that you've excelled? You get feedback at every half an hour on the system, right? You get feedback. Take that feedback very seriously, okay? Every file that you attempt, you basically get feedback in terms of whether you've spent enough time, whether you've scored below the threshold, whether you need to revise it, whether you need to redo it. All of that happens, okay? Again, feedback, Varun got a Q49. Feedback told him whether he needs to revise certain aspects in absolute values or in inequalities, right? The diagnostics told him what he had to focus on. Likewise, Anand's case, diagnostic told him that he was good with concepts, but he needed to focus on GMAT skill and process skill files, which means that he was able to save on time. And that's a very important thing. Time is a very precious commodity, right? So you are, regardless of what level you're starting from, that's what exactly I said up front. That's what Anant experienced. In fact, there was a student whom I was talking to last Thursday. He purchased the e-GMAT course to prepare for verbal because he was at a V30. So he prepared for verbal. He got to a V42. But then he was already at Q49, and he did not think that he would utilize the e-GMAT course to improve further. But he said, you know, I absolutely love the course architecture. He went through the entire quant course utilizing the PACE architecture despite not thinking that he needs to prepare for quant. Utilizing that, he made sure that all his gaps were filled, and he got to a Q50, a very comfortable Q50. Okay, that's the beauty of the course. Regardless of what level you're at, you get to your goal, your target of quant in an efficient manner. There's no doubts about, there's that predictability in your score if you're following the recommendations appropriately. Okay, now what are the next steps for you? You have to achieve mastery one step at a time. As we said, concept, process skills, then GMAT skills. Don't jump. If you are e-GMAT student, then go through the quant course in the prescribed manner. Okay, that's very, very important. The course is there, right? The feedback is there. What governs your success is whether you are following the course in the right manner or not, whether you're taking the feedback in the right manner or not. Okay. Now, for those of you who are not e-GMAT students, I would want you to take the free trial and, to make the most of from this webinar, take the free trial and figure out, as I said, upfront, this session over here mimics the architecture of the quant course. So experience it more, take the free trial, see if this is the right way for you to prepare. Now, in the free trial, you have linear inequalities module, right? So you'll be able to experience the fine-grained diagnostics, the conceptual understanding that you'll be able to see. Now, process skill files and GMAT skill files are not there for the right reasons, but I think if you start to feel confident of the whys and the hows in the pertaining to linear inequalities, then I'm pretty sure you would love the process skill and the GMAT skill files also. Okay, RAS2, the 7 modules that we are talking about over here are only in the are pertaining to the algebra course. All the number properties course, the word problems course, they contain every single thing that you need to know for GMAT. Okay. In fact, students have told me that if they go through the quant course the right way, they don't need anything else other than the official mocks. They don't even go through the official guides, because official guides are for quant are easier than the actual mocks, right? So than the actual test. So they don't even need to go through official questions. So they get everything that they need to. It's a single stop place to essentially master quant. Okay. So that's about it. Any other questions that you may have? I'm going to change the template here, and here you can see, and I'll bring back the chat. So I would love to get your ratings for the session. Truly appreciate that. And let me bring, and people who are giving me an 8, definitely tell me what I can do next time around so that you convert that into a 10. Okay. All right. I think that's about it. I would love to see all of you on the e-GMAT platform. If you have any questions with regards to any doubts regarding the questions that we did in this session, I think most of those questions should be addressed if you just sit down with a focused effort on the PPT over here, download the PDF, and you should be able to, address most of your questions. If not, then just write to us at support@e-gmat.com. RAS probability combinations gets covered in advanced topics course, which is part of the e-GMAT offering. And believe me, if you love this session, you're going to love advanced topics course. That's one of my, and I'll be very honest, advanced topics was always a dreaded topic for me. Just because the way it was taught wasn't really a very good way to learn. So because I faced those issues, I made sure that when we create this course for you, we address those issues. So you're going to see amazing insights from advanced topics course, right? People have told me, they dreaded the topic, and now they love the topic because of the simplicity in which we explain that in our course. Okay. Thank you very much. Amazing comments here. Could you email us the link for the next session? Absolutely. Let me bring that up front here so that you can register for that right from this screen itself. 1 second here. And what are the words that we have to remove from our dictionary? I want you guys to tell me. Thank you so much, Ras. Emma, you can see, so you can click on register now over here to register for these 2 webinars. Moksha, the session was an eye-opener for me. Thank you very much. Yes, tricks, patterns, trick, silly pattern. Good, very nice. I love it when you guys listen to me. That's very nice. The next session is free. Yeah, all these sessions are free of charge. All right. Good luck, everybody. Just focus on the right habits, focus on learning from the basics and improving your skills step by step. Okay. All right. Bye-bye.